and thank you all for coming. I'm glad you could make it. I appreciate it. So I have a question. How many of you have a child in college or is looking to go into college? Okay. Well, it ends up being an issue that many parents and many people are dealing with lately. And maybe you know a college student if you don't have one yourself. And to those people, do you feel unprepared for those educational costs? And if you do, you're not alone. The situation of student lending is becoming a scary prospect for potential students. This last year, student debt has surpassed credit debt by $830 billion and is likely to go over $1 trillion in the next year, according to an article in the New York Times, as well as Finaid.com, which is a website for scholarships and financial information on loans. The student default rate has jumped 26% in the last year alone, largely due to graduating colleges coming out into the workplace to no jobs or with jobs but having a large sum of debt. High-interest private loans are aggressively suggested by credit cards companies as a way to fill in the gaps that government loans can't fill. According to Finaid.com, a large percentage of students are graduating with a minimum of $10,000 to $27,000 in debt, twice that if a graduate degree is pursued. As a college facing graduation soon, I thought it was important to know the factors causing the rise in student debt. The major factors contributing to the rise of student loan debt are availability of loans, increasing college tuition, and our current economy. Student loan debt is rising due to the availability of student loans. Since Congress initiated the Higher Education Act in 1965, government lending has grown from $250 million to $30 billion in 1997, and it's continued growing. Government loans started off as subsidized, where the government paid off the interest of the loans while the student was in college. Now, unsubsidized loans constitute most of these loans, where the student is paying off the interest. This addition adds to the overall debt that the student has to pay. Where the Pell Grant, a government loan that lends money to lower-income families, and federal loans fall short to pay tuition, a government grant private loans come in then. With private loans, the student can borrow the amount of their four-year tuition. However, private loans come with severe drawbacks. The interest rate is higher and susceptible to change at any time the credit card company wants it to. And it is harder to apply for forbearance or deferment due to financial hardship, unlike federal loans where you have more options like economic hardship, if you can't find a job, things like that. Credit companies gear these loans towards students aggressively, advertising them as a solution to filling in that gap. Higher loans means more student debt. Student debt is rising to increasing college tuition. According to Finaid.com, tuition rises about 8% a year, doubling in cost every 9 years. That is a 2 to 3% more than the rate of inflation. It was in the 1980s that tuition began to outstrip median family income, according to Ronald Eichenberg of Cornell University. To quote, "The objective of selective academic institutions is to be the best part they can in every aspect of their activities. They aggressively seek out all possible resources and put them to use, funding things they think will make them better. To look better than their competitors, the institutions wind up in an arms race of spending to improve facilities, faculty, students, research, and instructional technology." Eichenberg also cites that more students are trying to get into private institutions because there is a better economic return in attending private colleges. Public institutions can blame their budget cuts on the state funding. However, in private institutions, those cuts can only be blamed on themselves. Therefore, to keep the goodwill of their faculty, which will help them move forward and grow as a college, they raise the tuition, which affects the students. In an article in CNN Money, according to the College Board, tuition at public universities has grown about 130% over the last 20 years, while middle-class incomes have stagnated. While college continues to grow in price, the overall income is not rising to meet it, making college a harder goal financially to realize. As a comparison, in 1988, the average tuition and fees was $28,000 a year, according to CNN Money. Rising college debts price out the middle class. By 2008, tuition had climbed to an average of $65,000 a year, a 130% increase. So think of that. In 1988, it was a lot easier to go to school than it is now, even though the economy at that time wasn't as good. You know, it's bad now and it wasn't good then, but still, in retrospect, it was more affordable. While both public and private institutions will continue to make their colleges better, offering more academia and nicer facilities, tuition will continue to rise. And as college tuition continues to go up, so does the student debt, as students struggle to fill in the financial gap that federal loans and grants just don't cover. Student loan debt is rising due to our current economy. The average student debt is currently $25,000, while the median income remains at about $33,000 a year. In the book, Condemning Students to Debt, the average student debt grew by 153% between 1985 and 1991. During the same time, the average gross income only grew by 5.5%. To quote Justin Drager, president of the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators, there does seem to be this growing disparity between income and the cost of higher education. At the same time, there's been a fundamental shift, moving away from public subsidization to individuals bearing more of the